Dear friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here today in Portugal, my home country, to open this discussion on financing the transition to a sustainable energy future for all. One that I'm sure will see the sharing of innovative ideas and teachable experiences that are helping drive progress towards the sustainable energy goals. Let me start by telling you about an inspiring woman that I met just last month. Her name is Jeanette. She's from Oyague in Chile, a small village near the border with Bolivia. She has 3 children like me. Energy access or lack thereof affected almost every decision she made. Intermittent power to the village meant, for example, that Jeanette had no refrigerator to store food safely or the ability to call for medical assistance during the night. Limited street lighting made it unsafe for her family and the community to socialize with others at night. Without a reliable source of electricity, Jeanette told me she felt quite literally powerless. There are far too many Jeanettes around the world today. She's but one of over 1 billion people without reliable access to energy. And there are 1 billion more people with no access to electricity at all. The knock-on effects on this energy poverty, on education, employment, social mobility, healthcare are huge. So delivering on SDG 7 is essential to unlocking the transformational change needed to achieve the ambitious 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. However, as we have seen yesterday and today, current projections indicate that we are falling behind the investment trajectory required to achieve universal access for all. The Tracking SDG 7 report that was released yesterday indicated that if current policies and population trends continue, as many as 674 million people will continue to live without electricity in 2030, and as many as 2.3 billion people will still be using traditional cooking solutions. Preventing this means scaled-up investments in energy solutions. The International Energy Agency estimates that we need to invest $48 trillion to meet global energy needs between now and 2035. The good news is that we are making progress, and the transition to a sustainable energy future is happening. Let's take 2017. We saw an additional 100 gigawatt in solar energy installed capacity worldwide. This is the same output as 200 coal-fired power plants, or enough to power over 17 million households. Again, last year, 2017, the world invested more in solar energy than in coal, gas, and nuclear combined. As a Portuguese, I am particularly proud of my country for being one of the world leaders in clean energy development. Large-scale investments over the last 20 years are now paying off in the form of high levels of clean energy in the power mix. In March this year, as many of you might have seen in the news, in international news, Portugal's monthly renewable energy production actually exceeded power demand on our mainland, providing yet more evidence of the viability of clean energy alternatives to power, not just in specific towns and cities, but entire nations like mine. These are impressive gains compared to where we were even 2 years ago. While we must celebrate, of course, the progress made and the results achieved, we must also be realistic about the challenges ahead, which will only be met with trillions of untapped dollars. So on to this trillion-dollar question, which is the question of today. How exactly do we mobilize the level of investments required? This is a question we ask ourselves all the time at the climate investment funds, which I have the privilege to manage for the past 4 years. This year, we are celebrating our 10th year anniversary, which has prompted us, as is often the case with milestone birthdays, to pause for thought and take stock of what we've achieved and learned as one of the oldest and largest multilateral climate funds in the world. One of our key lessons is that seeing is believing. Talking about the gains we've made through climate finance is important, but we actually need to show people that change is both possible and already underway. That's how we will catalyze more action. We want to make climate finance tangible, make it real, release it from the chamber where it still resides and into the homes and offices of all of us, of all citizens. It wasn't that long ago that climate change was still a relatively low-profile concept. It took the huge collective efforts of many, including civil society groups, journalists, and maybe an Al Gore or two, to raise its profile to the level it enjoys today. If we can achieve greater awareness of the challenge, then we can, and indeed we must, do the same with the solutions to it. CIF is part of that solution. We were created during the rather turbulent period of the 2008 financial crisis, which all of us remember very well. Since then, with our $8.3 billion of Catalyst capital, we've built a portfolio of over 300 investments in 72 developing countries. We are helping these countries scale up renewable energy and clean technologies, mainstream climate resilience in development, and support the sustainable management of landscapes. While $8.3 billion sounds like a big number, we also know this amount in itself cannot get us to where we need to go. Because ultimately, it is the private sector that has the resources to flip this script and to turn the billions into trillions. It's on this fundamental premise that we at the Climate Investment Funds designed our financing model, which we've fine-tuned over the last decade in partnership with our implementing partners, the multilateral development banks. Our investment model is simple. We seek to de-risk and incentivize private sector investment in clean energy solutions. First, we work with governments to help them create legal frameworks that encourage rather than restrict commercial investments in large, often high-risk clean energy projects. In Tanzania, for example, where only 33% of the population have access to electricity, we are supporting efforts to build an enabling environment for mini-grid development. An advisory working group, including government representatives, aims to establish technical standards for mini-grids to ensure supply quality and reliability so the private sector can grow. This process has brought more than 80 developers and 60 installers and suppliers into the market, and plans are underway to roll it out to East Africa, across East African countries. Second, we provide market support, so far to the tune of over $2 billion directly to the private sector, to help create viable, commercially oriented markets by reducing risk barriers. Another example from Africa, a continent close to my heart as well. In Mozambique, a country where 70% of the population has no access to energy, we are providing funds for the first large-scale solar plant in the country. And we are doing this with loans, not grants, along with private sector developers, and in this particular case, IFC. Large-scale investments opportunities are out there in developing countries, even in the least developed countries, though they need scaled risk-appropriate capital. We have had a lot of success with our business model over the past 10 years. We are supporting more than 1/4 of the current global concentrated solar power and geothermal power install capacity. With our resources in clean energy investments, we are mobilizing nearly 10 times as much in co-financing. And we are on track to lead to over 19 gigawatts of new renewable energy capacity, many of which in developing countries to provide energy access to underserved populations. The countless examples from across the SIF portfolio are a proof that with the right mix of sound financial and technical support, climate finance is a lever of scaled investments required to take this energy revolution further, which is needed to make good on the promises set out under the Paris Agreement and the SDGs. Let me go back to Jeanette. These promises were made to people like Jeanette, who, thanks to a SIF-supported financing package in the region's renewable energy potential, now has 24-hour access to electricity. Something she told me personally has changed her life. Her family is now able to store food safely or make phone calls in times of emergency. Jeanette and her previously unemployed partner recently opened a laundry business that is helping fund their children's education. Jeanette is even able to study in the evenings and is about to finish her online degree in human resources management. This is extraordinary. And all of this because of the 24-hour reliable electricity access per day. Jeanette's story is an important reminder of the immense opportunities that scalable clean energy investments enable. So the question is, what next? Our collective mission, all of us here in this room and all of those out there, all of us as practitioners, engineers, policymakers, investors, community leaders, must be to scale up and speed up integrated investments in sustainable energy. That means using public funds to back innovation and clean technologies as and when they present themselves. It means international financial institutions, the private sector, and national regulators working hand in hand to ensure that incentive structures are in place to unlock the trillions of dollars needed. And it also means further demonstrating to ministries of finance and boardrooms the huge wins that climate finance offers in terms of bottom lines, development gains, energy security. In closing, I would like to reiterate that the energy story is, in fact, a human story above all. I see just how transformative an extra few hours of energy access can be when I visit SIF-supported projects all over the world. And I'm always humbled by the life-changing impact that a reliable source of clean cooking can have on entire communities. In a way, we should see every kilowatt, megawatt, or gigawatt installed as more than just additional units of power. They are profound agents of social and economic change that transform lives. Our favorite acronyms, CSP, PV, CHP, they don't mean much just like that. They all represent jobs, diplomas, healthcare, food on the table. They represent the needs and the dreams of a generation. Jeanette and the billions of other people like her can only dream of a better future if they are quite literally empowered. Thank you.